The economic concept. So economics is a social science that is concerned chiefly with description and analysis of the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. The supply and demand model is the single most useful tool of economic analysis. So it explains how prices of goods and quantity bought and sold are determined in certain types of markets. So what we'll learn from this chapter is how the model of supply and demand works and how to use it. So what is demand? So quantities of a particular good or service consumers are willing and able to buy at different possible prices. So law of demand. Consumers buy more of a good when the price decreases and less when the price increases. So when price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. So because people don't want to pay more for things, and that makes sense. I wouldn't want to pay more for something. I always like paying less. So as a consumer, we want to pay less, and that's the ideal version. When price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. So that makes sense. That's why like my wife and I, we like to go to places like Salvation Army, we like to go to Talese, we like to go to places that have low prices. It's way better than paying full price. So places like Talese, Valley Village, Salvation Army. So places like that, it's a lot cheaper and you'll get more value out of your price. So that's why the places like that are very beneficial. So you want to pay the cheapest price possible for the most value. Factors of demand, changes in income, the income effect. So when income goes up, consumers buy more. So specifically with luxury goods. So anything that's a luxury good, like fancy food, fancy cars, fancy houses, fancy vacations, you're more likely to buy those types of things when your income goes up. And when your income goes down, consumers buy less of those fancy things, but they may buy more of what they call an inferior good. So when your income goes down, you're probably going to buy more of the inferior goods, such as like less fancy food if it's craft dinner, if it's noodles, that kind of stuff. If it's cheaper vacations, maybe driving to a place instead of flying. If your income goes down, you might be doing that instead of the more expensive trips. Let's say you might be, let's say, renting an apartment rather than owning a house, that kind of thing. When your income goes down, you're gonna buy more of those, as they say, inferior goods, and less of the luxury goods, like if it's boats, fancy cars, etc. So the demand for a product or service is how much of a product or service people are willing and able to purchase at various prices. Demand is represented graphically as a downward sloping curve with price on the vertical axis and quantity on the horizontal axis. Generally, the relationship between price and quantity is negative. This means that the higher the price level, the lower will be the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. What is supply? Supply is the amount of the product that is offered for sale at all possible price in the market. So the law of supply, tendency of suppliers to offer more of a good at a higher price and less at lower prices. When price goes up, supply goes up. The reason why that's the case is because when price goes up, the supplier, so the company, will get more money if they sell. So if they get a higher price for the product, they'll sell more because they'll get higher profits. So they have more of an incentive. Incentives are very valuable because they'll make more money if they sell more goods. That's the benefit of selling. If the price is higher, they'll make more profit. That's a big benefit. And then when price goes down, supply goes down. So there's less of an incentive when the price goes down. They're going to make less money. Their profits are going to go down if they sell more goods. So they're going to supply less. Their quantity of supply is going to be less. Makes sense. It's all about incentives. If they're going to make a higher profit, they'll supply more. If they're going to make a lower profit, they're going to supply less. And then factors of supply, cost of inputs, factors of production. When production costs go up, supply goes down. That makes sense because if the cost of production is higher, you're going to produce less. That makes sense because if your costs are higher, you're going to shut down a lot of your production. But if your production costs go down, you're going to be able to supply more. That's the big benefit. If you can reduce your production costs significantly, then you can produce more. That makes sense. Supply curve, the upward sloping supply curve is the graphical representation of the law of supply. Upward sloping, as per the law of supply, ceteris paribus. Price, y-axis represents price per unit of a good. Quantity supplied, x-axis at each price for a specific amount of time, a week, a month, etc. So as I said, if price goes up, quantity supplied will go up because the company will make more profit. When the price goes up, their profits go up. So that's that. They want to make more profit. If they're going to make more profit, they're going to supply more because they have an incentive to supply more because they're going to make more money if they supply more. So an increase in price will result in producers wanting to increase the quantity of a product they will sell in the market, chasing profits. Therefore, the relationship between the price and supply is positive. The higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. So the best price, the equilibrium price, is where supply and demand intersect. So this is very valuable. This concept of equilibrium price is very valuable. That's when the supplier and the demander, so the seller of the product and the buyer of the product, they meet in the middle. So that's a big benefit. This is the best graph to show negotiation because right in the middle is where they meet. So the buyer and seller, they might be negotiating for a long time. They meet in the middle. So the whole key is the buyer wants to pay as less as possible. The seller wants to make as much as possible. So the buyer wants to pay the lowest price possible while the seller wants to pay the buyer wants to pay the lowest price possible while the seller wants to charge the highest price possible. So it makes sense because if you're the seller, you want to make the most money possible, while if you're the buyer, you want to pay the least money possible. So you have opposite interests, and then you have to negotiate to meet in the middle. So then they meet in the middle at the equilibrium point, and that's why the equilibrium point is very important. This also applies to wages because a company wants to pay their workers the least possible, while the workers want to make the most possible. So negotiation is used to meet it in the middle. So that's a very important concept. So always remember here, the most important concept here about this equilibrium price is the wage situation. So just remember that if you're working for some company, etc., they want to pay you as little possible. So you have to negotiate the highest wage you can get. So I recommend think of a wage that you feel that you deserve and then ask for that. And then you might have to meet in the middle between what they want to pay you and what you want to get. You could also ask for something a little higher, maybe $10 or $20 higher than your the wage you want, and then maybe you'll actually get the wage you want. So let's say the wage you want is $40 an hour, maybe you ask for $60 an hour, and maybe they want to pay you 20 and they meet in the middle at 40. So yeah, if they want to pay you 20, you ask for 60, maybe they meet in the middle of 40. So you have to use this concept in negotiation. It's very important because if you don't negotiate, they'll pay you as little as as little as they can. So sellers and buyers deal with this all the time. If it was up to sellers, they pay us. If it was up to sellers, the price that we're charged is the highest possible. So we have to negotiate to bring it down to something that we want to pay. So negotiation is very important, and you got to make sure to negotiate for what you want. So if it's a low price, negotiate for that to buy. If you're a seller, negotiate for a high price to sell at. If you're trying to get a wage, negotiate for a high wage. If you're paying somebody, try to negotiate for a wage that you can afford. So these are very important concepts of negotiation. So I'll ask you here, this question here, what is the equilibrium price in here? So if we looked at this chart, what would be the equilibrium price for this chart here? So you say in the chat here. Yes, $1, correct. Abigail's correct. So it's when quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. So at $1, quantity demanded is 6 and quantity supplied is 6. So that's where the equilibrium price would be, and that's where everything's sold at. So that's the only price that the buyers and sellers agree on. So what is the equilibrium price based on this graph in 16? So Abigail says 150, correct. So yeah, 150 is where it's equilibrium. That's where the supply and demand equal each other. Excellent job. So graphical representation of equilibrium here. As you can see, the equilibrium is at 150. And then anything below the price of 150 is a shortage from excess demand. So if demand is higher, than supply, that's excess demand, and that's shortage. So they need more supply to meet the demands. And then a surplus is when there's too much supply. So there's excess supply, more supply than demand. So that's when a surplus happens. So surpluses happen when there's too much supply, and shortages happen when there's too much demand. So you want to meet an equilibrium. So the law of demand describes how price affects consumers, and the law of supply describes how price affects producers. So guns or butter, definition, decision of the government to produce military goods or consumer goods. Example, subsidized corn production, subsidized fighter jet production, trade-off may lead to shortages in one area. So this happens a lot in wartime. The government may spend more money on military goods rather than consumer goods, and there might be a food shortage. And then also there might be a situation where the government spends more money on consumer goods, like making products and services for the citizens, while they don't spend enough in military. So it's very important to find a balance there, because you need both. Both are very important for defense and also for sustaining our population. So make sure that yeah, so if you're in a situation where you're making those decisions for the government, make sure that there's a balance achieved between both military goods and consumer goods in this case. So production possibilities frontier is an economic model showing how an economic actor such as a company or nation can make trade-offs in production of different commodities. So I talked about this in a previous class here, last class, production possibilities frontier shows the maximum output of two different goods or services that can be produced in a given time period. So point C shows resources being wasted. Point D is unattainable given current resources, while points A and B are both productively efficient. So it's a very important concept here. So you want to be on the graph here. That's key. So if you're on the line here, that means that you're using resources to its fullest capacity. So the points A and B, that means that you're using the resources up to the fullest capacity. So anywhere on the line, you're fully efficient. That's very important to be on the line, but you want to be right in the middle. So I recommend being right in the middle here. That means that it's equal. So in this case, you're spending the same amount of money on defense as consumer goods. I wouldn't say for this situation, I wouldn't say it would probably be better to maybe do a 70-30 or maybe like an 80-20. So maybe 80% consumer goods and then 20% defense. That would probably be a good ratio. So 80-20, 80% consumer goods, 20% defense. So that would probably be a good ratio there, because you want to spend more on food, etc. That's probably a bigger share in that case. Then stay on the line. Make sure to stay on the line. But C is a recession. So if you're at C, that's a recession. So you're not using all your resources up to its full capacity. You're wasting resources. So you don't want to be at C. That means you're not using all your resources to the fullest potential. So you want to be back to the line. So make sure you're using your resources to the full potential. And then D here means that you can't get to D unless you have economic growth. So in your program here, you're doing biotechnology, and that's very important for economic growth. So the skills you learn from this program will make the graph shift over here. So you'll be able to achieve D with the skills you learn from this program and programs similar to biotechnology, and you'll reach D. And that's ideal. We want our graph to shift out, and skills from programs like technology, biotechnology, the graph will shift out and we'll have more of each resource. So in our real economy, there's thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of resources we have. But in this graph, we bring it down to two. So in this case, we group everything together. So we group everything under consumer goods that's needed for our domestic economy of Canada. While guns here, that would just group everything that's foreign. So like anything that we spend outside of Canada, we group into that. So we can have more of everything if we invest more in things that will grow our economy. So education, healthcare, innovation, research and development, investment in each worker, etc. So that'll bring us to D here. So that's very important. We want more investments in business, investment, research and development, education, healthcare, etc. So determinants of demand, prices of related goods, substitutes are two goods for which an increase in the price of one, other things equal, lead to an increase in the quantity demanded of the other. So substitutes, Coca-Cola and Pepsi are substitutes. So if the price of Coca-Cola goes up, people will shift their quantity demanded to Pepsi because they're very similar products. So they would be considered substitutes. While complements, two goods for which the increase in the price of one, other things equal, leads to a decrease in the quantity demanded for the other. So complements would be ketchup and mustard. So if the price of ketchup goes up, the quantity demanded for mustard will go down because they're frequently bought together. Usually ketchup and mustard are used together in hot dogs, hamburgers, and other products. So they're usually bought together. So can you think of, I'll ask the chat, can you think of two products that are bought together? Yeah, hummus and naan, peanut butter and jam, great examples. Yes. So if one of them goes up in price, the quantity demanded of the other will go down because they're bought together. So both of them, there'll be less quantity demanded and people will buy less of them. So that's yeah, exactly. They kind of go together. So like a lot of those products are great examples. And then taste, expectations, population. So tastes are a big thing. Sometimes people's tastes change. Maybe they don't like a product so much anymore. Maybe they shift their taste to another product. So the quantity demanded will go down for that product while the quantity demanded goes up for another product. Population, maybe the preferences of the population change. Expectations, maybe people expect the product to go up in price today. So they'll buy more. Sorry, so I'll rephrase. So maybe people expect a certain product or service to go up in price a year from now. So they buy a lot now in anticipation of the price increase. So the price is low right now. So they might buy a lot now to store before the price increase. That happens a lot, so they can hoard it right now, and then they'll have a lot stored when the price goes up. That happens a lot. Expectations play in. Yeah, if they believe the price will go up in a few weeks' time, they'll buy a lot more now because it's still cheap. Substitutes are goods you might purchase instead of each other. If A and B are substitutes, change the demand of A causes the opposite change the demand for B. So yeah, Coca-Cola, Pepsi. Factors of demand, price or availability of substitutes, substitution effects. Substitute is a good that can be used in place of another. Starbucks coffee or Dunkin' Donuts. So if the price of Starbucks goes up, the quantity demanded for Dunkin' Donuts will go up because people will shift to the cheaper version, cheaper product in relative terms. Substitutes, example, rye bread and wheat bread. If rye bread goes on sale, the demand for it will increase. The demand for wheat bread will decrease. If rye bread becomes expensive, the demand for it will decrease. The demand for wheat bread will increase. So I'll make a caveat here. Yeah. So yeah, the demands. So yeah, that's correct. Compliments are good. That are goods that are often purchased together. If A and B are complements, a change in demand of A causes the same change in demand for B. So factors of demands, price or availability of complementary goods. Complementary goods are things that are often used or sold together. So peanut butter and jelly. So if the price of peanut butter goes up, the quantity demand for jelly will go down. Complements, example, hamburger and hamburger buns. If hamburger meat goes on sale, the demand for hamburger will increase. This will cause the demand for hamburger rolls to increase also. If the price of hamburger meat skyrockets, the demand for hamburger will decrease. This will also cause the demand for hamburger rolls to decrease also. So let's do this here. So this was so I'll just say coffee and tea are substitutes. Needle and thread are complements. Marker and crayon are substitutes. So those are some examples. If the price of coffee goes up, the quantity demanded for tea will go up. Needle and thread are complements. So if the price of needles goes up, the quantity demanded of needle and thread will go down. Marker and crayon are substitutes. So if the marker price goes up, the quantity demanded of markers will go down. Crayon quantity demanded will go up. So if the person goes to the store, I'll zoom in here. So if a person goes to the store to buy peanut butter and jelly, so they can make a sandwich, but the price of one has gone up and they decide to not to buy either, this tells us that to them, peanut butter and jelly are what? So in this case, would they be a complement or substitute? Yes, yeah, complement, that's correct. Complement. Great job, excellent, correct. And if someone goes to the store to buy some Apple Jacks and the store is out and they buy Fruit Loops instead, this tells us to them that the two products are a complement or substitute. Yes. Yes. Good job, Anthony. Substitute. Yeah, Nicole. Excellent. Once a person buys this cereal, he also needs to buy what because it is complement cereal. Yes. Exactly. Good job, Anthony. And then good job, Samir. Milk. Yes. And then the demand curve may shift right due to an increase in consumer income, an increase in the price of a substitute, or fall in the price of the complement. All other things being equal, this results in an increase in price and increase in quantity in this market. So demand curve may shift left due to a fall in consumer income, a fall in the price of a substitute, or increase in the price of a complement. All other things being equal, this results in a decrease in price, decrease in quantity in the market. The supply curve may shift right. The supply curve may shift right due to improvement in technology, a fall in production costs, or the introduction of a subsidy. All other things being equal, this results in a decrease in price and an increase in the quantity in the market. So the supply curve may shift left due to an increase in the production costs or the introduction of a tax. All other things being equal, this results in an increase in price and decrease in quantity in the market. So shortage when quantity demand is more than quantity supplied, surplus when quantity supplied is more than quantity demanded. So yeah, shortage here is excess demand. So demand is greater than supply here. That's a shortage. And then the surplus is when the supply is greater than demand. And then they have to negotiate it out to make sure that the equilibrium is met. So negotiation is the process that leads to equilibrium. So if it's at surplus or shortage, they have to negotiate to go to equilibrium. So they can use an arbitrator, they can use a mediator, they could go into strike action. Those are ways they can negotiate, and they can be very useful strategies to negotiate. Also, using a lot of tactics for negotiation are very valuable. So there's a lot of good resources on negotiation, and I recommend studying into it. We'll go through a lot of tactics in this course as well. But yeah, mediation, arbitration, striking, unions are very good at negotiations. So being part of a union can help you with meeting equilibrium for your wages as well. So what is the difference between normal good and inferior good? So I'll ask you, what is the difference between normal good and inferior good here?
maybe like different brand of like chicken nuggets, and then you have $3,000 chicken nuggets.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of it's a style difference. Yeah. So like it could be like a name brand versus a no name, right? So instead of buying the instead of buying the
James, maybe.
yeah, instead of buying Jane's, you buy a no name. So that's a big difference here. Uh so yeah, normal good is if you buy Jane's chicken nuggets versus an inferior. So inferior would be no name chicken nuggets. So they bring up an example. Normal good would be like a butter, while inferior good would be margarine. A filet mignon, normal good, that'd be normal good, while hamburgers inferior good. So that's because the reason why it's like this is because these something like a filet mignon would cost significantly more than a hamburger. So if your income goes up, you're probably more likely to buy a filet mignon, while if your income goes down, you're more likely to buy a hamburger in comparison to filet mignon, right? On average. Uh, yeah, so that's usually what happens. So if your income goes up, you're more likely to buy more normal goods, while if your income goes down, you're more likely to buy more inferior goods just to save money because your income went down. So yeah, this is a good chart here. Like I said, this is under week 2. I'll just make sure it's available here for you. So if you go to week 2 here, so it is public. It's under the supply and demands PowerPoint PDF here. Number 43. So normal good, if there's an increase in income, there's an increased demand for normal goods. Normal goods are also called luxury goods. And then if for an inferior good, an increase in income, there'd be decreased demand. And then for a normal good, if there's a decrease in income, there's decreased demand, while an inferior good, a decrease in income, increased demand. So craft dinner is a great example of an inferior good. If you have a lower income, if your income goes down, you're probably gonna be more likely to buy craft dinner, foods like that are cheaper. So just to save money, right? And then this is a great graph here. Demand for normal goods versus inferior goods. Your normal good demand likely goes up when your income goes up on average, while inferior good demand goes up when your income goes down. That's on average. So on average, it's that case, but you want to make sure you're saving money regardless. So if your income goes up, uh, based on a personal level, like my family, like my wife and our kids, we would still buy a lot of inferior goods. Even if our income went up, we'd still be buying a lot of inferior goods just to save money. But this is the average. This is what happens on average in the economy. The uh the demands for this is what happens on average. But my recommendation is still buy a lot of inferior goods, even if your income went up, just because you can save that money. That's just my recommendation, but it's totally up to you. But yeah, just the benefit of buying almost all inferior goods still when your income goes up is you can save more money. So if you can buy inferior goods, if almost all your goods can be inferior goods, sometimes you can treat yourself, right, and buy a normal good. But if almost all your goods can be inferior goods, you can still save a lot of money. So that's just my recommendation. Saving is very important. So you can save it for investments, and you still get a lot of value on inferior goods. If you can find an inferior good that is the same quality or better than a normal good, which happens a lot, do that. So yeah, there's a lot of great no-name products out there. There's a lot of good President's Choice products out there. There's a lot of good, you know, cheaper products out there that are better in a lot of cases than the name brand, right? You can also like the hamburger better than the filet mignon. So that's just my personal recommendation, but like just make your own decisions and if you like normal goods better, that's great. Yeah, but it's totally up to you. Macroeconomics, a branch of economics that studies how an overall economy behaves. Microeconomics is the study of how individual actors make choices in response to changes in incentives, price resources, and or methods of production. So macroeconomics is really countrywide. So investment markets, trade policies, that's under macroeconomics, while microeconomics is really focused on business, small businesses, transactions between small businesses. Let's say if you sold something on Amazon, that would be under microeconomics. So it's really focused on things like e-commerce. If you have an online store, if you're doing a small business, that's microeconomics, while macroeconomics is countrywide, etc. So microeconomics examines the behavior of individual decision-making units, business firms, and households. Macroeconomics deals with the economy as a whole. It examines the behavior of economic aggregates such as aggregate income, consumption, investment, and the overall level of prices. GDP is the total monetary market value of all the finished goods and services provided within a country's borders in a specified time period. Perfect competition is a theoretical market structure in which there are no monopolies. So perfect competition is a perfectly competitive market, has four conditions. There are many buyers and sellers. Sellers offer identical products. Buyers and sellers are well informed about the products. Sellers are able to enter and exit the market freely. So perfect competition, there's no profits at all. It's extremely competitive. Products aren't different at all. It's a very difficult industry to be in. The closest one that I can think of is retail, because the products are, for example, Walmart, their profit margin is around 3% per year. Even with over $400 billion of sales per year, they make about 3% profit margin.